The core problem, the core conflict that we found true for any organization today is the following. This is a core conflict from the point of view of managers. Here I must make some comment. Whenever I'm doing analysis on a company, I'm doing it from more than one angle. One is from the company, one is from the people who are working for the company. I must get the same answer exactly. Because if there is a conflict between the management of the company, for example, and the company, you're dead. Anyhow, it must merge. Here is, for example, the core conflict when I'm doing it from the management point of view. The objective of every manager is manage well. Do you agree? I haven't seen yet one manager that comes every morning to work and says, how can I mess things up today? Such a person does not exist. I must admit, I've seen more than one manager that messes things up every day, but that's not intentionally. That's the objective, to manage well. But what is the meaning of manage well? To manage well, we have to satisfy two different necessary conditions. One is we must control cost. If we don't control cost will go too high, we are bankrupt. And this is correct for a for-profit organization and for a non-profit organization. From the other hand, we must protect sales. What is sales? Sales are the things, the deliverables that we promise to the external world. Okay? That's the meaning of sales. So, for example, if you are in a for-profit organization, you know exactly what is sales. If you are in an army, sales means what you promised. You promised defense. This is what you have to protect. Call it readiness if you want. Okay? To do one without the other is you have done nothing. Now, in order to control cost, what must you do? Remember, where is cost drained? In every department. Everything costs you money. Correct? So if you want to control costs, you have to have the control on the local basis where the cost is drained. Which means, in order to control costs, you must judge according to the local impact. On the other hand, look what is happening to sales. Your commitment to the external world as an organization. This is not done by one person. Because if it would have been done by one person, we didn't need the whole organization. If you look, for example, a for-profit organization, okay, there is people who are designing the product and people who are producing the product and people who are shipping the product and people who are getting the clients to know that will know who to ship to and people that are billing and collecting the money. If one link, just one, drops the ball, what happened to sales? Drops. In other words, the sales, and once again, it doesn't matter if for profit or not for profit, is achieved through synchronized efforts of more than one link. Which means, if you want to protect sales, you cannot anymore judge by local impact, because a local impact, what is good for one link, may be devastating for another. You are not allowed to judge according to local impact anymore. Is it understood? Fine? You see now, in order to manage well, I must control cost, and at the same time, I must protect sales. But in order to control cost, I must judge according to local impact. In order to protect sales, God forbid that I'm judging according to local impact. Have you noticed a small conflict? This is, by the way, what I call the precise definition of a problem. The conflict that prevents attaining a desired objective. In TUC world, it's called the cloud. Why? Because a big black cloud above our head represents a real problem. Let me show you what happens when we are restricting ourselves to the area that the goal have restricted itself. In other words, to the shop floor, to production. If I'm going to production, the translation becomes the following. The objective is still manage well. But instead of control cost, I'm getting something much more specific. I'm getting constantly fight to reduce waste. You see, as a person in charge of production, I cannot control the big things. But one thing I know, everyone wants more. Sometimes they are right, many times they are not right. If I will not make sure that the more that they want will not be abused, which means it will not be wasted, if I will not constantly fight to reduce waste, cost will go out of hand. So as a production manager, that's constantly fight to reduce waste is what I call control cost. That's a translation for me. Same time, what is the biggest waste? In the eyes of production manager, it's not scrap. Do you know what's the biggest waste? In spite of the correct huge efforts that just-in-time and TQM and Lean now is doing, it's not scrap, it's not these things, it is something else. Let's face it. Here is a machine that we bought for $3 million. And this machine we use only 1 day a week. This is what we call waste. Here, all these people that we pay nice salaries, plus fringe benefits, plus health insurance, plus vacations, and they're working only 50% of the time? What a waste. In the eyes of most managers in operation, today, still, a resource standing idle is the major waste. Which means what? If I want to constantly fight to reduce waste, and the biggest waste is resources which are not utilized, I must use efficiencies, local efficiencies, as a prime measurement. I must know what percent of the time you're really working. Because if you're working 90%, fine, but if you are working 50%, that's not fine at all. I must use that as a prime measurement. At the same time, remember, in order to manage well, I have to protect sales. What is protecting sales in operation today? Today, it is constantly fight to increase flow. Faster, faster, faster. Look what happened. 20 years ago, we have promised 6 weeks and we have delivered 70% on time and everything was fine. Today, we promise 3 weeks, we deliver 95% on time and the bastards are still bitching and moaning. You know what I'm saying? It's everywhere. If I want to protect sales, and I'm not talking just immediate sale, but sales in general, after that, I must continuously fight to increase flow. But what did we learn? The biggest enemy of flow are the local efficiencies. Here is a foreman that wants to score high on his variances, and because of it he's doing a larger batch, and the whole flow stops. Which means, in order to constantly fight to increase flow, don't even dream to use local efficiencies as a prime measurement. Here is the conflict. And this conflict is causing everyone in operation to constantly jump between the drops. To the extent that right now it's very important to be not to waste, and that's why we have to do these optimal batches, and we have to pay attention to that, and we have to pay attention to that, and tomorrow we get a furious phone call from a client, and then we switch immediately to that, and then you stay all the weekend deliver the things, expediting 2 things, okay? Breaking all the rules of waste. And we all the time jumping between that and that. Unfortunately, most efforts that I see is to try to find an optimum point here. We call it optimizations. Most ERPs that sold today are in order to do this optimization better. This is, in my eyes, ludicrism. Because if you really look on what is happening today in every company, our people are much better than we give them credit. They are so close to the optimum. And even if you use all the sophisticated tools in the world, you will not increase it by more than 0.5%. What we have to do is, that's my belief at least, not to accept the conflict. The conflict is here because we have made a mistake. We have assumed something about reality that is wrong. And as long as we continue to assume it, we will face a conflict. The things that helped me to find it was the fact that in social sciences, the proof is everybody does it. Everybody believes in it. This means it must be right. In physics, if you say everybody believes in it, it doesn't mean a thing. It still can be very wrong. So you have to really rethink all the assumptions. Here's a beautiful example of it, because what I want to prove to you is this assumption, a resource standing idle is a major waste. Even though it is believed throughout the world by almost all managers, it is still wrong. First of all, let me ignite in you the sneaky suspicions that it might be wrong. Can you imagine an environment where we are paying for the resources for their availability? We're paying their salaries, we're paying for the equipment. Still, we don't think that they should work all the time. On the contrary, we think that if they will work on that all the time, it will cost us a fortune, and better to pay them to stay idle. Can you imagine such an environment? If not, let me give you an example. Do you have a firefighter department in your house, in your town? You pay for it? Salary? Equipment? Would you like that your fire department will work 100% of the time? No, this means putting all your town on fire. This is not exactly what you want. In other words, the fact that we are paying for the resource for its availability, machine, we pay the investment, worker, we pay the salary, this does not yet mean that if it stays idle, it's a waste. It will be such if, in making it really work, I don't have to pay something in addition. Who said that this is the case? Let's examine it. And in order to examine it, I have to build a model. Once again, when I'm looking how models are done in things which relate to people, like in economy or in management, I cannot understand it at all. Let me show you how models are built in physics. The first thing that you do is you are figuring out what are the essence of the model. In other words, what are the most important things that you want to model? This is what you model, and you leave out all the trivialities. And not you model according to what you know to solve, which is the way that economy is doing. What are the most important things in operation? In my eyes, there are three of them. One is the fact that we do not deliver through the use of one resource. We deliver through the synchronized effort of many resources. Otherwise, we wouldn't have an organization. All the problematics, all the difficulty comes from the fact that it's not a single resource, that it is dependent resources. What makes a dependency is the fact that they have to be synchronized in order to deliver the things that we are selling. So this is a must to appear in our model, dependent resources. The second thing is not to overcomplicate. And somehow I see overcomplication in the modeling. Because let's face it, everywhere, any organizations that you go, you will see that operation is not built arbitrarily. People have brains. And because of it, in any operations that you go, you can see the direction of flow. True, some products are going in the middle. Some are making a ping pong before they continue. Some are jumping. But you do see the direction of flow everywhere. So let's put it, there is a general direction of flow in real life organizations. And the third thing that I must emphasize, because I haven't seen it in most of the models out there, is something that everybody knows. Murphy does exist. If you solve a problem which you assume Murphy does not exist, you are not solving a real problem. By the way, as managers, let me tell you something. Not only that Murphy exists, he is specifically after you. What is the definition of Murphy in my vocabulary? What's the chance of a piece of bread falling with the butter facing down? No, not 100%. You're optimistic. The chance of a piece of bread falling with the butter facing down is directly proportional to the price of the carpet. Now let's take the three of them together and build a model and see how simple the model comes out. Let's do the model. First thing is, we'll put dependent resources. Let's put some circles to show it to them. Remember, each circle can be a whole battery of machines with people and with tools. Okay? I'm not talking here about a line here. Each one of that is a type of resource. And the resource can be a whole cell. Okay? Second thing is, there is a direction of flow. Come on, give me the arrow. Beautiful. Okay? There is some direction, yes. Some products will go ping, ping, and then out. Some products will go here, and then out. But most products, the vast majority, okay, this is a direction. All of them. Fine. And the third thing is, of course, Murphy exists. Now, what is the question that I built the model in order to answer? Is it correct that, in reality, besides paying for the availability of the resource, I will have to pay more if I want to utilize the resource 100% of the time? Because if I have to pay more, it means that if it's idle, it's not necessarily a waste, because I'm saving the things that I'm not paying more. Let's try with one resource first to see if this concept is correct, even for one resource out of them. Which resource are we going to look on? I don't care, arbitrarily. Let's designate it by X. Let's put X on one of them randomly. Here it is. Fine? Now look. As we said, Murphy exists. What does it mean? It means that from time to time, we must assume that one of these resources will be hit by Murphy, and because of it, his ability to produce will go down. That's the meaning of Murphy, and we must assume that this will happen. If that's the case, since this is the direction of flow, after a while, what must happen? This resource will starve. It will not have work to work on, and then I cannot use it to 100%. So if I do want to use even one resource to 100%, I have to pay a penalty. What is the penalty that I have to pay? I have to build a bank of work right in front of this resource. Let's have it. Here it is. Some bank of work. So that when these resources, one of them is hit by Murphy, this can continue to work. This is a penalty that I have to pay. How big of a penalty? It depends on the environment. This is what really differentiates, in my eyes, between three different environments. One is operation. I'm saying operation, not just production. Because, for example, the paperwork operations that we have in our company, that's production. The other environment is service. And the third environment is engineering. So far, all of them obey exactly the same things. They have dependent resources, they have a direction of flow, and so on. The real difference comes in how much it costs us this. For example, in production, this costs us quite a bit. It's the lead time and the inventory. You know that most of the inventory and the lead time is in the queue. Happens. Murphy. Not too big. And if we'll stop to talk about it, it will be even smaller. This is lead time and inventory. But in service, the damage is much bigger. Why? Because in service, many times, we cannot start to work before the client came. For example, my garage cannot start to fix my car before I've brought my car. And if I will find out that I have to be without a car for 3 days because the car is used as a bank to make the garage more efficient, let me tell you that if I'll find another garage, I'm going there. In other words, this bank of work here costs you customer service. Or let's look at another thing. Hospital. Hospital is production. It's operation. It's more than one resource involved to give us a treatment. Of course, they cannot start to treat me before I'm there. If you noticed, in hospital, I'm not just a client, I'm also the work in process. And if I'll find out, and that's what's happening in almost all hospitals, how much time do I stay there, waiting and without being treated? So that the physicians and the administration and the nurses will be more efficient. The real difference, by the way, is here you are paying with customer service. Everything that we are talking is correct also for the service environment, but you will have to do the translation. The translation in the language. For example, hospital is operation for every aspect, but they use a different language. For example, in a hospital, they do not use the word scrap. Have you noticed? By the way, do they have scrap? Of course. Okay? So you have to do the translation. That's what takes more time. Or, for example, when we are saying in industry, we have lost a part, it means we put it in a warehouse. Where the hell is it? When they are saying in hospital, we have lost a patient, don't look for this patient roaming in the corridors. He's gone. Okay? It's a matter of translation, nothing more than that. And as I said, the magnitude of this penalty, which immediately dictates different ways to work. In engineering, this penalty is much bigger than anything. Why? This is the majority of the lead time. In engineering, especially project engineering, product design, many times the penalty of being late is more than the price of the entire project. So in engineering, product engineering, to have a bottleneck is almost ultimate stupidity. Don't worry, you don't have bottleneck in engineering. And the proof is that your engineering department is claiming that everybody is a bottleneck, which means they don't have even one. Look what is the real proof for it. Let's go back. Murphy hit one of them. This resource continue to work, drawing from the bank. So what must happen to the bank of work? It must go down. This means what? That the minute that Murphy is rectified and all of them are working full capacity, each one of them now have to do two jobs at the same time. One, it has to satisfy the work for this one, which means it has to have the same equivalent capacity as this one. But at the same time, they have to do a second job. What is the other job? Right? They have to rebuild the bank. Do they have infinite time for it? No. They have to rebuild it before Murphy hits again, which means they have to have ample capacity to do it. This is what we call protective capacity. If we don't have that, nobody can be utilized to 100%, not even a single one. Now look what is happening. I will go to this resource and I will tell him, work! Be efficient, work! And he will say, fine, boss, but the bank is full. And I will tell him, none of your business. You work all the time. What is the unavoidable result? Lead time goes up, inventory goes up, not sales, which means by forcing him to work all the time, that's where I'm creating the biggest waste of them all. What should I tell him? If the bank is full, stop. When do you have to continue to work? The minute that something is drawn from the bank, immediately, as fast as you can. That makes perfect sense. This, if you don't mind, is a base for just-in-time. The only problem is that they put the banks everywhere rather than where it counts. That's the real difference between drum buffer rope and just-in-time. Not in the concept, but in what is the best rule. Let me explain a little bit drum buffer rope so it will become more understandable. We take the bottleneck. If we don't have a bottleneck, the only bottlenecks that we have is the orders that we've committed to. That's the only constraint in the operation. We are basing now the schedule based on what? Satisfying the constraint. That's the one that limits us. This schedule, which is just the plain orders or the plain orders modified by the concerns of the bottleneck, this is what is called the drum. Why it's called the drum? That's a drum bit that everybody else in operation have to pace in accordance. Then we establish the buffer. How big is the buffer? Depends how big is Murphy. Is it understood? That's the one that dictates it. And then we establish the rope. What is the meaning of the rope? Choking the release of work to be in line with what is happening here. Whenever things is taken from the buffer, you release more work in accordance with what was taken. That's it. This is called drum buffer rope. Yes, as simple as that. As a result, are phenomenal. As a matter of fact, drum buffer rope is not enough. We have to change all the measurement system as well. And the way to do it is to realize that Murphy hits all the time and we shouldn't change the plan due to Murphy. We have to separate between planning and execution. Execution means what is a change in the local priorities due to Murphy. And that's very important to build this mechanism. And not that if something happens not according to plan, which is Murphy hit, that we will do planning, which means we take then a local disturbance and we, with our own hands, create a global disturbance. You know this concept. This concept, in a different way, was radiated by Deming all the time. And that's what he jumped up and down. By the way, Deming is not a statistician. Deming is a physicist. It's all based on physics. Well, Deming says the following. Look, let's see what is the variations. As long as it's within the variation, don't realign the machine. Because if you realign the machine, you increase the variation. You are turning a random noise into systematic noise, and by that you are enlarging it. So as long as it's within these parameters, don't realign the machine. You want to reduce the variability even more? Correct the process itself rather than realignment. Same thing is correct, not just for one machine, but the whole thing. For that, we have to bring in something called buffer management. And buffer management is setting the immediate priorities according to Murphy. Let me just give you some hint about it. For example, you are a foreman, not of a bottleneck. You have now 2 jobs. Which one to do first? In order to show you what is a mechanism to do it, I will use something broader than that. You are not a foreman. You are in charge of the machine maintenance. Okay? It's a service to the operation. He comes to you as a foreman. He comes to you and say, one of my machines is down, come and fix it. Before you go there, he comes to you as a foreman of another department and say, one of my machines is down, come and fix it. How do you choose today? We know, by the level of the screams. Is there a better way? And the answer is yes. What you have to do is to ask the machine that is down in your department, which is the task that is needed the most in the bank? The machine that is down here, which is a task that is needed the most in the bank on that machine? Now you know which machine has to be fixed first. By the way, don't ask them, they will cheat and lie. You have to get it directly from the system. This is called buffer management. It is also the things that now can guide for the first time all the efforts of Lean. Because it can set the priorities of where Lean methods should be used in order to fix the process and where not. Otherwise, we'll get a huge problem. Let's face it. Thank God that there is a huge initiative today on Lean or Six Sigma. It's the same. But let's understand something. These initiatives are not new. We called them 10 years ago TQM and Just in Time. We replaced the name. We started again. Why? Because TQM and Just in Time, even though it's the same, have deteriorated to lip service. Why did it deteriorate to lip service? Because the techniques are wrong? Not true. The techniques are phenomenally good. What caused them to deteriorate to lip service? The fact that there was no focusing mechanism. I am a worker. You are telling me to fix my process. You teach me even how. I fixed my process and I see that nothing happened in terms of the impact of the whole plant. What do you think? I'm dummy? I'm an idiot? These things will cause it that I will lose interest in it and it will become lip service. That's what's happening everywhere. In order to make sure that this initiative today of Lean and Six Sigma will not deteriorate as before to lip service, we must provide the focusing. What's the meaning of focusing? That we tell them, here, this process, this aspect of this process must be fixed. And the minute that they are improving on it, immediately the whole system takes advantage on it. So they see that they really improved the plant. If we do it systematically, then Six Sigma and Lean will yield the benefits and will flourish. The only thing that can give it to you is buffer management. Buffer management is a place where all the problems are coming in. For example, if I am tracking which work center have caused the deepest penetration into this bank, what do I get? Over time, let's say over 2 weeks, what do I get? I'm getting which work center has to be fixed and in what aspect of it. So the statistics the buffer management tells me immediately which priority should I fix. But if I'm looking on the statistics coming from buffer management, it tells me which processes must be fixed, which means it is the focusing for all of Lean and all of Just in Time. Please do it, otherwise, who knows if you'll be able to start a third time. And these techniques, these local improvement techniques of Lean and Six Sigma are phenomenally good. Now look what we have seen so far. What happens when we don't obey it and we cause everybody to tell him, work, work? What is the unavoidable result? We are pushing things that shouldn't be pushed, right? They will start to accumulate. Remember, not everyone following the exact same routing. They will start to accumulate. We continue to push. In some places, it will become to be a nice mountain for a while. What will we say then? Ah, this one is a bottleneck. Then the mountain shifts, and we'll say the bottlenecks are moving. The bottlenecks are not moving. We, because we don't realize what is a real constraint and choke the release, we, in attempts that everyone will work all the time, we create the wandering bottleneck phenomena. And it's not because of mixed changes. It is because of the efficiency, local rule of the efficiency, and because of the batch size rule, which is once again local optimal rule. Let's see what we have now. What I've tried to demonstrate to you is that this approach of finding what is the wrong assumption, building from its whole procedure, is the only way probably to find the holistic rules. And the holistic rules are not one sentence. For example, the answer to the efficiency syndrome is not anti-efficiency. It is a whole procedure that we have to put in place. The drum buffer rope and the buffer management procedure. And that's why I claim that in the ERP case, when the limitation was as big as we must make decisions without having all the relevant data, the rules are part of the real fabric of the company, all these local optimal rules. And the new rules are not just new rules, they are whole new procedures. And that's why the hardest part is to get these procedures. Don't worry, this is done. This is a work of 20 years. You have read the goal. You probably know that the goal was written in 83. It came out at the beginning of 84. I went from physics into this field in 78. So the goal is actually a summary of the first 5 years of my work. And it's not just me, my work. I had the best laboratory in the world, which is called the Industry of the World. Hundreds of people were participating in developing, testing, and retesting, and retesting. And believe me, I didn't stop to think in 1983. I continued on to cover all other functions, finding out systematically all the local rules and what should be the holistic rules. Just to show you how well it is working. From my experience, everyone that have tried have made it. I'm unaware of one single failure. And I've got hundreds of letters. For example, the letters that I cherish the most, and I'm talking about the goal. I've got also on the other books. I got it about 1 year after the goal came out, and it was from a plant manager. And he wrote to me, Dr. Goldratt, your book is not a novel anymore. It is now documentary, because I have replicated what's written in the goal, done exactly that, and I replicated the results. And the only difference between your book and my reality is that my wife didn't come back yet. The results are real. The only independent search that was done on it was done in 1999 by 2 professors from New Zealand. It was published by Apex as a book. It's called The TOC World. It contains 88 articles published by companies. None of them solicited articles about what they've done and what's the results. None of them is solicited. The average results of implementing drum buffer open buffer management in these 88 companies is lead time cut by 70%, total inventory by half, but the most important thing, with the same people, same machines, the amount of throughput, the amount that was offered to the market, increased on average by 70%. This shows you to what extent this efficiency syndrome is killing us in creating so much work for nothing. 70% on average. We will talk more about, if it's so good, how comes that only about 2% of the world industry is using it. By the way, 2% of the world industry is thousands and thousands of plants and companies. But still, what about the other 98%? And this has to do with some things that you probably are aware of. It's called resisting change.